Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So tonight's issue that we're going to discuss is the hotel business. And, I think it's really interesting because, a lot of people have heard the stories of what's happening at airports and passport offices and border crossings and things like that. The issues at the airports are obviously having an impact on the tourism business and the hotel business. And the pandemic, had a really negative impact on the hotel business. But now it's almost like there's this huge amount of pent up demand and people are traveling like crazy. So I wanted to reach out to an expert in the hotel business. His name is Tony Cohen, who's joined us today. He is the president and CEO of Global Edge Investments, and he's also the executive VP and partner of Crescent Hotel and Resorts in Canada. Global Edge Investments is a vertically integrated hotel, hospitality, and management company, and he is a board. It's an investment company that he founded in 1998. They've been involved in the creation, repositioning, development, and ultimate sale of some of Eastern Canada's most notable hotel transactions. I'm going to ask you about some of them in a little bit, Tony, but they include the first Le Germain Hotel outside of Quebec, a Thompson Toronto Hotel, Howard Johnson's Yorkville Hotel, etc. He is also on the partner and chief Canadian officer in Crescent Hotels and Resorts, a top 4 North American independent hotel management company operating 105 hotels across the continent. So he must have a pulse on what's going on in the hotel business like no one else. Tony, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Brian, for having me. It's quite an honor. I don't know if that was a bio or an obituary, but I'll take either. Appreciate it.
It's a very impressive bio, and I want to ask you about some of these developments. But first of all, why did you get attracted to the hotel business?
It's not a great story, and it's going to sound a little tongue in cheek, but I was a tennis pro, believe it or not, and I played in high school and I played in college, and then I taught all over the world. And that's where I fell in love with the service business. I worked most notably at a place called the Inn at Manitou, which is now defunct, unfortunately, but it was in Northern Ontario, and it was a Relais Chateau. And the then editor of Tennis Magazine, this was in the early 90s, dubbed it the #1 luxury tennis resort on the planet. And I fell in love with the service business. And I know that sounds very cliche, and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that led to the restaurant business. And then as I like to joke, feeding my guests wasn't enough. I wanted to sleep with them. And then I decided to get into the hotel business. And the good news is I was very young. I was very ambitious. I was very ignorant. And I could take big risks. So if not for a combination of all those things, I don't think I would have had any success if I've had any at all.
Fantastic. That's a great line about you didn't want to just feed people and have dinner with them. You wanted to sleep with them. So what was the restaurant you were involved in?
I worked for a company it was then called Prime Restaurants. It's now basically part of Cara, but it was Eastside Mario's, Casey's, Lime Ricky's, Pat and Mario's, Red Devil Barbecue and Tavern, Prime Pubs. And at the time when I joined the company, they had about 55 restaurants, and they had a very ambitious mandate to grow the company to almost triple the company in 3 years. And they started a then brand new training logistics department, which would actually get them to that point. So I was fortunate enough to join and fortunate enough to open about 55 restaurants over 3 years right across the country before I ventured out on my own.
Fantastic. And then what did you venture out on your own into?
Well, then I did the Germain. I was 20, I think I was 26 or 27 at the time. And Prime at the time had given me, at the time they were the largest casual dining restaurant company in Canada. And they had given, certainly for a person of my age and experience, a really great job offer. And much to the chagrin of my mother and my stepfather, I declined it and decided that coming from Montreal and seeing these call it boutique hotels developing all over the world, and specifically in Montreal. I thought, as a adopted son of Toronto, I thought Toronto really needs something like this. So I left not knowing anything about the hotel business outside of working as a tennis pro, and decided that I was gonna, that's what I was gonna do.
And where is the Le Germain?
So Le Germain is on Mercer Street in downtown Toronto. So it's in the entertainment district, kind of just west of University, south of King Street. And at the time, there was really nothing there. This was in 2001. I left in 1999 to go do this. I met the Germain family shortly thereafter from Quebec City. They were very established, very well-heeled, entrepreneurial hospitality family based out of Quebec City and Montreal. They wanted to venture into Ontario, knowing that it wasn't easy for a French-Canadian family. And on my side, knowing that I didn't really know very much, I met them, and we ended up partnering together, and we built their first one, and they've now grown that brand into, I think, 25 hotels under numerous brands. But the first one was the Germain, and it was, we opened at a very interesting time, but maybe we can get into that later. But that was my first ground up development.
Fantastic. What an interesting career so far. I look forward to chatting more about your resume. I want to hear about the Thompson Hotel and what happened there. But we're going to take a break for some messages. We're going to come back with Tony Cohen talking about the hotel business, the challenges during COVID, and where he thinks it's going today in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Our guest tonight is Tony Cohen. We're talking about the hotel business. I wanted to ask him about both his own career and some of his experiences, but I also want to ask him about what happened to the hotel business in the last couple of years with COVID, and then where he sees it going today, as we seemingly have some issues with finding workforce in a lot of the different parts of the tourism industry. The airport seemed to be the biggest problem, and or the passport office right now. In restaurants, I was in a restaurant last night, and they said that they closed their kitchen down because they can't find enough employees, and so therefore they don't serve food. They just serve alcohol and some appies. I was surprised by that. Tony Cohen is the founder and CEO of a company called Global Edge Investments, which is an investment company in the hospitality sector. He's also the executive VP and partner in Crescent Hotels and Restaurants Canada. Tony, thanks again for joining us. So we were chatting about some of your early experiences. I want to come back to those in a couple of minutes if we could, but let me switch, if I could, to COVID. Tell me, particularly with your Crescent experience, and how many hotels did you say you're responsible for?
We have, it's actually, I made a mistake when I sent you the information. We're at 112 now at various stages. So we're right across North America, right across Canada and the US. And I'd say entering COVID, we were probably at about 85. So we've actually been able to grow the business. And we are, just to be clear and to understand, in the hotel business, there are three stakeholders. There's an owner, an operator, and a brand. They can all be different. They can all be the same, or you can have a combination. We are solely a third-party operator. So we work on behalf of ownership groups, and we represent the brands.
What's happened to the hotel business in the last couple of years?
Well, it's been utter carnage.
Carnage.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it.
Don't hold back. That's great.
Well, I hate to be brutally honest, but a few good things have come out of it. So utter carnage in the sense of we went from an industry in North America that was running, depending on the market, 65 to 75% occupancy to less than 10%. That's a big drop when you think about it. And the difference between the hotel business and any other business is whether you have one room full or all your rooms full, you're doing 5% occupancy or you're doing 95% occupancy, the lights need to be on. The HVAC needs to be on, especially on a day like today in Toronto, where it's 32 degrees and feeling like 42. So your fixed costs are very high. and it is a labor-intensive business. So the bad news is when you fall well below those fixed costs in terms of revenue, things are challenging financially. The good news is once you exceed those, then the incremental profitability is that much better. So going back to your question about COVID, it was brutal. For Crescent, we had a little bit of a different model because we're a pure play third-party operator. We own no real estate. We have no corporate debt. We were actually on the better side of carnage. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and say it was wonderful. It wasn't. There was a time where we thought it was pretty bad. But a couple of things for us that we noticed. One is that competitors, so our clients, spoke on a level, had discussions that they never did before in terms of, I wouldn't say they were giving each other their secret sauce, but they were asking questions and having intimate discussions that they wouldn't have, because literally it's the only time, at least in my career and as far back as I can read in the history books, that everybody has been in the same boat. Everybody was affected, and everybody was affected on the same level. So what happened with us specifically is on a corporate level, we didn't furlough anybody. We made a very conscientious decision that we were not going to furlough. Why? One, we wanted people, we knew things were going to come back, and we wanted our corporate associates to feel like they mattered. And two, we felt like our clients needed us more than ever. And what came out of it, interestingly enough, was a very interesting growth spurt in our history. We're just, and just to take a step back, so at Crescent, we're privately owned. We don't report to any outside sources. So we make decisions that we think are good for the long-term growth of our company. We don't have to hit our quarterly reports. We're not a private equity firm. So we thought that this was a very good decision. And in hindsight, very risky, but it was a good decision because not only did we bring loyalty and culture within the team, but what was happening was a lot of our clients were speaking to their competitors, and their competitors were asking, who's doing well in your management group and who's doing poorly? And inevitably, we were represented as doing well, and we got introductions and friendly introductions from clients of ours. So bad news, good news story. But again, I don't want to sugarcoat the magnitude of COVID. And I'll just, one last comment. What was very interesting to me is we have properties that are unionized, non-unionized. We have urban, we have resort, we have 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, we have independent, we have branded. And so it's all kind of under the same auspices of how you run them, but they all have their different intricacies. And one of the things that we found out was a lot of the impediments and barriers that we thought in the past, we can't do this because it's going to affect guest service, it's going to affect the union, it's going to affect that. We as an industry, and certainly we as a company, we actually had to break down the way we operated. And as I like to sort of joke in a development analogy, we kind of rebuilt our operational model from the studs up and said, historically, we've thought we had to operate with this position and that position. But what COVID taught us is we weren't operating maybe as efficiently as we could be and as we should be.
Were there any sectors of the hotel business that did okay?
Yes. Certain long-term stay, extended stay did better in certain markets. And hotels that were specifically positioned in kind of the nexus of markets where you had students, you had healthcare, you had what was deemed essential workers. So if you had hotels that were located in those markets, it worked very well. And then certainly in the US, there are certain markets that I'm not going to say COVID didn't exist, but it was less of an issue. the Floridas of the world, the Texases of the world. They didn't experience lockdowns and the restrictions that we experience in Canada, both as a nation and provincially, and they came back much quicker. And certainly leisure and resort came back a lot quicker than. It's actually quite interesting, and cut me off for a second, but I was looking at the statistics today, looking year over year, and it's a bit of a misleading year over year because 2021 we were still in the depths of things. But if you look at Canada, and if you look at hotels over 500 rooms, year to date in Canada, they're doing a 50% occupancy at a $253 rate versus last year, 21% occupancy at a $154 rate. So that's a massive leap. Now, granted, we were in the depths of horrific restrictions, but as you quite well pointed out, it shows you the level of demand and pent-up demand that was there.
I spoke to a banker that said that no one except one bank were financing any hotel business or much hotel business in Canada a couple of years ago. And the one bank that was dedicated to corporate hotels in downtown Toronto and downtown urban markets. And they bet real wrong because of COVID, and they got decimated. And so now almost no one is banking hotels. Is that true?
It's you need to have a very strong balance sheet. You need to have a very strong track record, and you need to be aligned with the right brand and the right operator to even make it make sense financially. But your point is well taken. But what's interesting, even though I liken COVID in a way, I say it's like SARS and the Great Recession and the real estate crash all rolled up in one on steroids. It was something that was such a large precipitous fall that happened on a level that we couldn't comprehend. But that said, if you look back historically, and I'm I guess unfortunate enough to be old enough to have experienced a lot of these ups and downs, lenders get scared when times get tough, and certainly COVID is a representation of times get tough. But the one difference I will say, and this is less answering your question about going forward and more going back, is historically speaking, and all the downturns that I've seen in our industry, whether it's 9/11 or the Great Recession or some of the others that have happened, in those cases, lenders were very quick to say, okay, I'll take the hotel. This COVID was such an unknown, and it was such a, call it freak of nature, that lenders didn't actually want to take back hotels because they didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or the next day, or the next day, or the day after that. So there was a big word out there as forbearance. So they were very flexible, and understandably so, because we were all kind of unsure of what was going to happen.
We have everything in the economy, governments, et cetera, complaining about inflation, that prices are skyrocketing. What's happening with prices in hotels, room rates? Are they skyrocketing too?
If you look at the data, they are. But so the good news about the hotel business is it's elastic pricing, much like the airline business. So when there's compression, when there's business to be had, you can drive your rates up, and that those rates, those incremental dollars, will flow more profitably. The bad news is, to your earlier point about very hard to find people these days, and every incremental dollar that you charge at a hotel, whether it's a Holiday Inn Express or a Four Seasons, there's an expectation on the guest side in terms of service. And at the end of the day, as much as the industry has changed over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, there's been a proliferation of brands, design, technology. It's still a people business. It really is at the root of it. You want to see something smiling. You want to see someone who welcomes. I like to joke that, or we've joked internally over the last couple of years that we spent, or certainly I spent my entire career teaching two things. One was make sure everything is clean all the time, but never let them see you cleaning. And two, be in the customer's face all the time. Well, COVID kind of reversed that for a while. And it was, I want to see people cleaning all the time. And I don't want anybody in my face, but I want a personalized experience. So in a roundabout way, in answer to your question, yes, rates have skyrocketed, but there is coming a tipping point where the expectation and the ability to deliver service may not be able to be met. This is why certain establishments are scaling back, like the restaurant you had dinner at last night, which said we can't deliver on the full meal experience. So I'll give you a couple of cocktails and I'll give you some apps, and hopefully you'll walk out happy because
I haven't heard that, other than my own experience. I haven't heard it much. And, it's interesting as we have this sort of rebound and reopening. Obviously, the airline industry has been like devastated by bad publicity. So, the airline industry has canceled tons of flights. And I've just had disastrous results in being delayed by like 5 hours. I was flying out to Edmonton and I was supposed to leave at 8 o'clock. It left at like 1 o'clock in the morning. It was like a reverse red eye. I landed at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I've heard so many scare stories of baggage that's been lost. And I ended up having a really interesting conversation with someone in the airline business who told me that what happened is no one was doing any hiring or training for 2 years. That they weren't training pilots, that they weren't training customer border service people, that they weren't training baggage people, and that a lot of the people working in the airline business need to have special security credentials and things like that to be past security, and they weren't doing any of the training and or approval process to allow that to happen. So they were caught completely off guard by the resurgence. Has that happened in the hotel business?
To a certain extent, I wouldn't say as much as the airline industry, and I think the airline industry are somewhat further shackled. We were shackled by government restrictions. They more so, and they also have airport authorities who are, if you look at, well, certainly in Canada, but if you look at what's happening at Heathrow, where they're asking airlines to cut flights because they can't accommodate these people going through security, and then you have governments meddling in and trying to do the right thing, whatever that means. But in answer to your question, circling back, we've had it in certain cases. So technically, we're a steward for our ownership groups. And the ownership groups who have understood that things would come back and were proactive have fared much better, where you proactively hire in advance of what you think is coming down the pike. And I'd say we've been as fortunate as one can be. That said, a couple of things have happened. There have been a lot of long-time industry people have taken early retirement because they've been given packages, especially with the brands. They just said, I don't need this. A lot of industry people have decided this is not for me. And then there's another subsect, and I haven't quite figured this out, so I might be speaking out of school, of industry people who either are financially independently wealthy or through a whole plethora of government subsidies have been able to get by and not show up. But even before the pandemic, we were finding it hard to hire because it's a difficult industry first and foremost, and we have a generation now that's I wouldn't say they don't like to work hard, but they have a different way of viewing the world. And now we get a lot of people. I mean, we've had to roll out incentives and financial and otherwise that we would have never dreamed of, not only just to get people, but to keep them as well. And I think no fault of our own, and none of my competitors as well. I think we're all doing everything we can, but there are a lot of choices out there right now. You can come and work a tough dishwasher shift, which isn't fun, on hours that you don't want. Or if you happen to have a car, you can go drive for Amazon and get equal, if not better pay, same benefits, and choose your own hours. So we're up against a very tough competition.
So given this experience of COVID and then this recovery, are there any key lessons that you've learned?
I think that the key lessons are, and I hope we've always operated our business this way, is never get complacent, never expect that tomorrow is going to be just like yesterday. We are, as a business, I think we've learned inherently, we are a perishable commodity, our business. I can't sell last night's room tonight. I can't sell tonight's room tomorrow. I can't fill a bar seat that was supposed to be filled from 5 to 7 tomorrow night to replace last night. So I think we've always known as an industry that we had to not rest on our laurels and understand that you're only as good as your last day. But I think what the pandemic has done is that's accelerated and that's exacerbated that. And we just have to be that much better and ahead of the curve. And it's the industry we signed up. But all that said, it's still a wonderful industry. There are a lot of great people out there, and we help a lot of people, and we have so many stories of whether people who, customers or our associates who have been so positively impacted by the environment that we create, and that's what really quite frankly gets me excited every day, as cliche as it sounds, to see the smile on their faces, and for them. And I know a little bit about your experience going to Edmonton, but had it not been for that night audit, who welcomed you so graciously when you arrived at whatever time you arrived, 4 or 5, 6 in the morning, that kind of makes all the difference, because it's not their fault. But if you can create an environment where they can create these experiences and maybe make your day a little bit better, that's something to be proud of.
So it's still a people business.
I think absolutely. And I can't see a world where, as much as technology is going to make a difference and continue to make a difference, it, in my opinion, will continue to be a people business. Absolutely.
We're chatting tonight with Tony Cohen. He's the founder and CEO of Global Edge Investments, a hospitality investment company. And he's also the executive VP and partner of Crescent Hotels and Resorts Canada. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Tony in just a couple of minutes. We're going to ask him a little bit about Le Germain. We're going to ask him about the Thompson Hotel. And we're going to ask him about some of the stuff that he's learned from his industry experience. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone. We're chatting tonight about the hotel business and what's happened to it during COVID, what's happening to it now in the recovery, concerns about potentially a recession coming up next year, and what you got to do about that with Tony Cohen. He is the founder and CEO of Global Edge Investments. He's the executive VP and partner of Crescent Hotels and Resorts Canada. Tony, you told me a little bit about Hotel Le Germain. I actually remember having drinks in Hotel Le Germain, the lobby, just after it opened, and it was one of the coolest places to go. But you said that it was inundated with challenges. That you started construction 2 weeks before 9/11. You opened it within 1 month of opening. You had SARS, Mad Cow, war in Iraq, ice storm of 2003, and then the blackout of 2003. How did you deal with all that?
Well, thank you for your kind words, and I'm glad you enjoyed your experience when you were there. But it's funny because I say, if you could have asked me for a list of the top 100 things that could have gone wrong in a hotel opening, those 3 or 4 things that you mentioned would have been 1,000, 1,001, 1,002, and 1,003. Because I guess, it comes back to necessity is the mother of invention, and you can build the most beautiful building, restaurant, hotel in the world. But if it doesn't have people in it, it's all for naught. And what we had to do is we were forced to get gritty, and we were forced to figure out what we need to do. And it was a function of a couple of things. It was that people weren't coming to Toronto because they were scared they were going to get SARS and die. So cutting the rate probably wasn't the best idea. But were there operational things that we could change? We started doing breakfast in a different way. We started calling people ahead of time and saying we would offer turn down service. And we decided, well, if somebody's going to show up at 5 or 6 at night, do we really need to have a housekeeper do the room and then turn it down? If we know they're going to show up at 6 at night, well, why don't we just, when they clean the room, they set it up for turn down? So there are little things that you have to figure out on the fly. And we were fortunate enough that we built well, and we bought well, and we had a nice product, and we had amazing, amazing people. And when the market rebounded, we became the beneficiaries.
And then you said you were involved in the Thompson Hotel. And right after opening, you got hit by the 2008, 2009 financial collapse, and your financing all dried up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess my timing is really bad with all of these investments, but absolutely. We started building in 2008, and then the Great Recession hit, and our financing completely dried up. We didn't know if we were going to get to the finish line. And we had to, I wouldn't say beg, borrow, and steal, but we had to bang on a lot of doors. And the one thing with the Germain, and you need to go.
So what did you do when the financing dried up?
We banged on a lot of doors, and we really, I think the one thing that, and same with the Germain to a certain extent, but we had this unwavering, myself and my partner, belief that this product, which had been successful in different markets, not Toronto up to that point, Toronto would welcome it if we could just get over the finish line. So we did everything we had to open. I wouldn't say we cut some corners, but we certainly had to cut some costs here and there. We had to personally take some financial hits. And it was, I like to tell this story. I remember there were some bad days, and there's a great book by a guy by the name of Ben Horowitz, of Andreessen Horowitz, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And life and business isn't always easy, and it's hard, and sometimes you have to dig in and do the things you have to do to make it work, and we did it. And I remember saying to my business partner at the time, I think we're going to make it. It's touch and go. We've had some bad days, but we're going to make it. And maybe it was about 12, 14 months later, we were fortunate enough to host a very big Toronto International Film Festival party, just 2 months or 3 months after we had opened. And I'm standing in the corner with my partner, and I see Bono walking over to George Clooney and hugging each other. And I looked at him and I said, I think we've made it. It's okay. It's all going to be all right. Bono hugs
George Clooney in your lobby, you've made it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have to make money. We're not altruistic, and we're not, we don't want to just celebrate celebrities, but it was tough. It was tough. And we pivoted where we had to, and we did all the things that we had to do to get over the finish line. And was it pretty? Absolutely not. Was it a straight line? No. But
now, was
it
the first rooftop pool patio? Because it had an incredible reputation, did it not? It was,
and we did some interesting marketing and PR things where we kind of offered these exclusive memberships that you could neither apply for nor pay for, and we created a real buzz around it. And again, fortunate enough to have a great team of PR people and marketing people and sales people around us to create the buzz and the excitement, and then of course the people to deliver on the service promise. But it was interesting. So this is 2010. Social media was a little bit different, but these membership cards that you couldn't pay for, nor could you apply for, were selling on eBay and some of these other websites for $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a card. So I felt quite good once we kind of got to that point that we had something and we just needed to build upon it.
The brand was, so well known. I was surprised that whoever bought it changed the brand.
Yeah, it's so the brand really was an interesting one. It when we signed, they only had 2 hotels. They had New York and they had 3. They had Miami and they had Los Angeles at the time, and it fought way above its weight class. And I think part of it, the brand evolved significantly over the course of when we owned it. But I think when the new owner bought it, I think they were looking for something a little more luxurious. And that coincided with Hyatt actually buying the company, which was called Two Roads Hospitality, which owned the Thompson brand and the Leela brand and the JDV brand. So maybe they thought it was going to be diluted a little bit.
Has it been?
I still think I still think it's a significant brand, and if you look at there's some very distinctive design features and offerings. The rooftop bars are great ones. If you look at all of the beds and the bedding, there's a distinctive piping on the sheets, on the duvets of every single Thompson hotel, and it's a certain color, and there's a certain number of piping that they have, and those things have retained themselves. And I know we're going to get into a little later, but I sort of have a view about the hospitality industry, whether it's restaurants, hotels, or events. It's not about doing one thing right. It's about 1,000 little things that add up to an experience, and you can't always pinpoint what those are. But then when you take a step back, when they're done right, you say that was a great experience. And conversely, when done wrong, you say the antithesis of that.
So, Tony, we've got some parallels that I thought I'd point out to you, which are kind of interesting. You started out with Prime Restaurants. I started out with Keg Restaurants, and my first job.
Oh, I didn't know that.
My first job was working for George Tidball, and I was doing acquisitions and financings and running some restaurants for him and converting them from crock and block and corkscrews to Keg Restaurants. And then I went into the hotel business and I became a hotel restaurant consultant with Laventhal and Horwath. And I was doing feasibility studies and things like that for different hotel companies all across Canada, primarily Ontario, New York, et cetera. And then I worked for the Walt Disney Company and did strategies for not only hotels, but restaurants and entertainment districts and amusement parks as well. So I didn't only want to eat with people and sleep with them. I wanted to ride roller coasters with them.
Right, which is a whole nother level. You see a different side of them. So we have an equal, I wouldn't say dementia, but craziness about this business that we're both in.
I asked you for some lessons learned though, which I found really quite interesting. And lots of people will come back when I ask the question with like 3 or 4. You came back with like 12. So tell me about some of the lessons learned, if you could.
I'm not always perfect at when the days are tough, and there are tough days at dealing with these, but I've tried since I started in the restaurant business or in the hotel business or in the service business as a tennis pro to remember these and to heed them. And a few of them are, and I think I mentioned this one earlier, you're only as good as your last day. It's great to celebrate all the successes, but if you do a great job yesterday and a terrible job today, people are going to remember that. And the most notable example is when you're in a restaurant and you have a great experience, but you just want to get out for whatever reason at the end, and you can't get the bill or you can't pay, and it just takes too long, and that just changes your whole experience. So it's not only a day, it can be within an hour or 2 hours. And I always say our business it's not about if something goes wrong, it's when it does, because it will inevitably. The AC, like in your house, the HVAC will go out, and how do you make it comfortable for people when it's uncomfortable? Because it's 42 degrees, and that's not comfortable for most people. and then I sort of look at the people side of it and empowering people. And I think you hire personality. You can't teach. Sorry, you hire people. You can't teach personality. I always say, if you're willing to be proactive as an associate and go out there on a limb for a customer, that's fine if you make a mistake. Just don't make the same mistake twice. And then there are the simple ones, right? Hot food hot, cold food cold. I mean, that could be extrapolated over so many different levels, but isn't that the most simple concept when you think about it? If something needs to be hot, serve it hot. If something needs to be cold, serve it cold. Think about that in every context of the service business. And then I guess the last one, I have a few others. I'll give two more. One is, and I was taught by when I was a tennis pro at the Inn in Manitou, I said no to a guest, and the owner pulled me aside and gave me what for and said, never say no. And I said, well, I can't do that. And they said, well, give an option. Give an option that's not what they want, but it's something else. And it's just spinning, it's weaving the narrative into a different way. And I'd say the last thing that I've learned is, as I've been an owner, as I've been an operator and sat on various sides of the table, is lead by example. I always sort of marveled at people who own hotels or run hotels, and they'll walk through and there'll be a piece of garbage on the floor and they'll say to someone, pick that up. Well, if you can't pick it up yourself, why is the person working for you or with you going to pick it up? And it's so easy. Lead, pick up a piece of garbage. Oh, there's a light out. Let's go change that. Let's look at the hotel, the restaurant from the perspective of the guest. And at the end of the day, there are tired properties, and that's fine. There are older properties, and that's fine. We can call them vintage. We can market them in whatever way we want, but nobody will accept dirty. So let's make sure it's clean and do everything that we can. And there are a host of others, but those are just a few.
Those are great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, I worked for Jimmy Pattison. And
oh, wow.
Jimmy used to walk through manufacturing plants and other facilities, grocery stores that he owned, et cetera. And he would do the same thing. He'd pick up the garbage, and it's something that, you know, I try to emulate, and he wouldn't say anything about it. He would just do it. And let me tell you, every single person walking the tour with him noticed that he picked up the garbage, and he wouldn't hand it off to someone, as I've seen other, you know, other people do. They'll pick up the garbage and they'll give it to someone else to throw away. He'll find the garbage can and throw it away. And he'll talk to people, and he picked people up at the airports, and he drove them to the airports, and did all those things that really said that people matter. Cleanliness matters. The little things matter. And there's great people that you can learn from. And I think we've all learned from you tonight, Tony. I really appreciate it. We're going to take a final break and come back with some concluding comments in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight about the hotel business. Our guest is Tony Cohen. He's the founder and CEO of Global Edge Investments, Executive VP and partner of Crescent Hotels and Resorts Canada. This guy has seen it all in the hospitality business over the course of his career. He's opened up the Hotel Logement. He's opened up the Thompson Toronto. He worked for Prime Restaurants, which was the largest casual restaurant chain. And he's now running, what was it, 112 hotels across North America, where he runs the management company that manages those hotels. Tony, I've been saying to a lot of people that we should be thinking about this as potentially what happened in 1920. And coming out of the Spanish flu, and maybe it was different then because it was the Spanish flu plus World War I. So people really had not done a lot for a while. And on a per capita basis, maybe the Spanish flu was more lethal than COVID. But you know, without media, you didn't know about it, and so a lot of people were shocked and terrified and thought that it was the end of the world. And when it was over, people went nuts, and it led to a huge resurgence in lots of different activities. Like it was the Roaring '20s, it was Great Gatsby, it was end of Prohibition. Social attitudes changed because people came out of this forced confinement and traveled and toured and went nutso. What's your sense? Could we be duplicating that now?
Absolutely. The parallels are uncanny. But interestingly enough, and yes, it's totally different because media was different, and the way we communicate was different. And absolutely, Spanish flu ravaged a lot more people than the pandemic did. But the idea of the world sort of shutting down for a period of time was very similar. But what's interesting, and being a little bit of a history buff, looking back, the Roaring '20s didn't actually start till about 1924. Technically, when you look at the Roaring, so I'm sort of interested to know what happens in the next year and a half or so. But I do. It'll be an interesting ride for sure. Let's hope 2029 doesn't replicate 1929 and lead to what happened then. But I think you're absolutely right in your analogy, and I think that there's recession. Recession is very technical, right? It's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So what does that mean? Relatively speaking, you see a lot of companies that came out today with their earnings reports. They were positive, they were glowing. The markets rallied, but the markets are also very reactive. So I guess in a long roundabout answer to your question, I think we'll see something very similar. But I always think of that old Voltaire line where he said, the quote where he said, "History doesn't repeat itself, man does." So let's hope we're smart enough to learn from our mistakes.
Last question, Tony. You've got such an incredible business career, and you're involved in so many different businesses, but you also find time for charitable involvement. You're on the boards of Mount Sinai Foundation, Birthright Israel Canada, the Design Exchange. You've started the Torah Foundation. You're involved in Birthright Israel, Mount Sinai, Tennis Canada, the Bell Lightbox, the Ontario Science Center, the Association of Israeli Decorative Arts. Why? Why are you involved in so many philanthropic things when you got such a busy business career?
Sounds much better when you say it, but thank you. I think it's incredibly important. I was taught from a very early age that it is our duty and our responsibility to give back. And I've been very, very fortunate in life. And whatever I can do to help, however small, I will and I do. And there's so many organizations out there that are in need of help. And if you can find something that you're passionate about and you feel like you can contribute to, then go ahead. And I also go to the adage, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So hopefully.
Tony Cohen, thank you so much for joining us tonight and inspiring us with things that you've learned in your business career that are very applicable to, I think, almost everyone in their careers, and your stories about both Le Germain 2003 and the Thompson Hotel 2008 opening up into pretty challenging environments, and you having the resilience and the fortitude to manage your way through it. So thank you very much for that inspirational talk. And I agree with you that people buy from and want to work with nice people, and having that smiling face at the front of the hotel or the front of the restaurant are critically important. And so I look forward to sometime having a drink with you in one of these establishments, and maybe we can chat a little bit about the parallels between our two careers.
I can't wait. Thank you for the opportunity, Brian. I really appreciate it.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online, even from the Saint Germain in downtown Toronto at www.saga960am.ca. Good night, everybody.